How long can you wait before it breaks you? How long, O Lord? Will you forget me forever? Psalm 13 does not begin politely. It begins honestly. How long? Not once. 4 times. How long will you forget me? How long will you hide your face? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts? How long will sorrow sit in my chest all day? This is not poetic exaggeration. It is emotional exposure. There are seasons when waiting no longer feels spiritual. It feels exhausting. You wake up already bracing. You carry questions that have repeated for months, maybe years. You are not doubting God's existence. You are doubting whether your situation is still seen. That distinction matters. Most people do not walk away because they stop believing. They walk away because silence starts to feel personal. How long will you forget me? Notice what David says. He does not say, how long will this problem last? He says, how long will you forget me? Waiting begins to distort perception. When relief delays, when answers stall, when nothing changes externally, internally, it begins to feel relational, as if the delay means distance, as if the silence means withdrawal. David does not hide that distortion. He brings it directly to God. How long will you hide your face? This is not rebellion. It is intimacy. Only someone who believes God is near would dare accuse him of feeling absent. Psalm 13 legitimizes a kind of prayer most people are afraid to say out loud. Prayer that sounds frustrated, prayer that sounds tired, prayer that sounds unfiltered. How long must I take counsel in my soul? In other words, how long do I have to solve this alone inside my own head? You replay conversations. You imagine outcomes. You rehearse worst-case scenarios. You do not stop functioning. You keep working. You keep showing up. But internally, you are in constant debate, and the sorrow does not lift. Have sorrow in my heart all the day. Not momentary sadness, sustained heaviness. This is the kind of season that makes even strong people quiet, because explaining it feels pointless. It is not dramatic enough to call a crisis. It is not visible enough for sympathy. It is not resolved enough for testimony. It just lingers. Psalm 13 gives that lingering a voice. And here's what is remarkable. God does not rebuke David. He does not correct his tone. He does not demand composure. He allows the question, which means the question itself is not a betrayal. Asking how long is not the opposite of faith. It is faith refusing to disappear. Faith that stays in conversation even when relief has not arrived. Most people assume strong faith never asks how long. Psalm 13 proves otherwise. Strong faith asks and stays. Staying with unanswered prayer is more difficult than leaving. Leaving feels decisive. Staying feels exposed. But David stays. He does not suppress his frustration. He does not spiritualize his exhaustion. He names it. And naming it is not weakness. It is alignment. Because pretending would separate him from God more than honesty ever could. There are seasons when your most faithful act is simply refusing to stop speaking, refusing to turn silent, refusing to harden, refusing to withdraw. How long is not despair's final sentence. It is trust under pressure. Pressure does not destroy faith immediately. It reveals where it rests. David's faith rests in a God he believes can hear accusation without abandoning him. That is a durable relationship. If tonight you are tired of repeating the same prayer, if silence has started to feel heavier than the problem itself, Psalm 13 does not shame you. It stands with you. The question is not proof of distance. It is proof that you still believe someone is listening, and that belief, even strained, is still belief. The psalm does not resolve immediately. It lingers in the question, because sometimes the question itself is where faith breathes. Not in certainty, not in victory, in staying. And right here, before the tone shifts, before hope re-enters the language, David does something crucial. He keeps talking. He does not exit mid-prayer. He does not conclude too early. He remains in the conversation long enough for something inside him to shift. Not the circumstances, him. And that shift, David does not rush himself out of the question. He does not pretend clarity where there is none. He does not erase the weight of how long with instant optimism. Instead, he stays long enough for something subtle to move inside him. Not the situation, not the timeline, not the outcome, his orientation. After the repetition of how long, after the confession of sustained sorrow, after the exposure of inner debate, David says something small but decisive. But I have trusted. Notice the tense. Not I will trust. Not I am trying to trust. I have trusted. Past tense. Which means trust existed even while the questions were loud. Trust did not wait for silence to return. Trust coexisted with exhaustion. This is crucial. Faith is not the absence of how long. Faith is continuing to speak to God inside it. David does not receive new information before he shifts. He receives no sign that relief is near. Nothing changes externally, yet internally, something stabilizes. I have trusted in your steadfast love. Steadfast love is not dramatic language. It is durable language. It means love that does not fluctuate with mood. Love that does not thin under pressure. Love that does not evaporate because the timeline disappoints. David anchors himself there. Not in answers, not in movement, in character. When circumstances remain unclear, character becomes the ground. God's steadfast love does not rise and fall with your emotional temperature. It does not require enthusiasm. It does not demand momentum. It simply remains. And that remaining becomes enough. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. Notice again, not because the problem is gone, because God has acted before. Salvation here is memory language. David remembers prior deliverance even if this current one has not arrived yet. Memory becomes fuel when visibility fails. You may not see what God is doing now, but you can remember what he has done. And remembering is not denial. It is perspective. Perspective does not remove pain. It prevents distortion. How long is real. But so is you have been faithful. Both sentences exist together. That coexistence is mature faith, not blind optimism, not forced positivity, balanced memory. David then says, I will sing to the Lord. Again, before resolution. Singing here is not celebration of victory. It is defiance of despair. It is saying, this waiting does not get to write my final tone. You do not sing because everything is fixed. You sing because God is still God. The order matters. Most people want resolution first, worship second. Psalm 13 reverses it. Worship inside unresolved tension. Not loud, not theatrical, but steady. This is not emotional manipulation. It is spiritual grounding. When you sing or pray or whisper gratitude, you are not denying the delay. You are refusing to let delay redefine God. That distinction preserves your interior world. Because prolonged waiting does something dangerous. It narrows your vision. It makes the present problem feel total. It compresses the future into a single uncertainty. Psalm 13 expands the frame again, not by removing the problem, by reintroducing perspective. God's steadfast love is larger than this silence. God's history is longer than this pause, which means your story is not stuck. It is unfolding slower than you prefer. Slow unfolding is not abandonment, it is pacing. And pacing feels different than pressure. Pressure demands immediate change. Pacing allows time. You may still wake up tomorrow with the same unanswered prayer. You may still feel the ache of repetition, but now the question has context. How long is no longer despair. It is conversation. And conversation means relationship still exists. Relationship means you are not alone inside the silence. David never receives a timeline in Psalm 13. There is no immediate miracle. The shift is internal. He moves from accusation to anchoring, from distortion to remembrance, from exhaustion alone to exhaustion carried. That is the subtle miracle of the psalm. Nothing external moves yet, everything internal steadies. And sometimes that steadiness is what keeps you from breaking. If tonight you are still asking how long, you are not faithless. You are human. If the silence feels heavy, you are not weak. You are waiting. If hope feels quieter than it used to, that does not mean it is gone. It may simply be deeper now. Psalm 13 does not remove the delay. It removes isolation inside the delay. God is not offended by your repetition. He is not irritated by your honesty. He is not withdrawing because you ask too many times. You are still in conversation. And conversation means connection remains. How long can coexist with I trust? Both can live in the same heart. That is not contradiction. It is complexity. Complex faith lasts longer than simple certainty. And you are not asked to feel triumphant tonight. You are only asked to stay. Stay in the conversation. Stay in honesty. Stay in remembrance. You may not know how long this season continues, but you are not forgotten inside it. You are not invisible to God's steadfast love. And even if nothing changes tomorrow, even if the silence continues, the relationship remains intact. You are still speaking. He is still listening. And that quiet, unresolved, imperfect is still faith. Amen.